over the past several years, and we'll continue to introduce it. I think following the federal system.
And in the House in this coming week on Monday.
And since most people weren't able to prove that special need,
I have a general idea of what I would have said under that circumstance, but no, I don't.
That's what they did originally with SB 2. Now, SB 2's been bounced back and forth between the Assembly and the Senate.
Democrats actually passed the Safer Communities Act.
Last month, while attending my oldest son's first Yaffle football practice at a public park.
Breaking news, the governor of New Mexico has gone completely tyrannical and decided to attack the right to carry. U.S. District Court temporarily halts New Mexico governor's firearm order. A recent order issued by the governor of New Mexico, Michelle Grisham, tried to outlaw the lawful carrying of weapons throughout the city of Albuquerque and throughout Bernalillo County. However, U.S. District Court Judge David Herrera Urias has ordered a temporary halt to the order, which can be found here. The judge's decision acknowledges the order's manifest inconsistency with the Second Amendment and stays their execution until after a final hearing scheduled for October 3. The only parts of the public health order that are directly covered by the restraining order are Sections 1 and 4. On state property, public schools, and public parks, the possession of firearms is restricted according to Section 4 of the statute. However, there are exceptions for law enforcement officers and certified security officers. The open carry and concealed carry restrictions, both of which have been ruled unenforceable at this time, are temporarily suspended, as is described in Section 1. The case that challenged these restrictions said that they violated the rights guaranteed by the Second Amendment. It referenced various judgments made by the Supreme Court, including one from the previous year that emphasized the legitimacy of gun ownership for the purpose of self-defense both inside and outside the home. The attorneys contended that even in a time of emergency, the governor does not have the authority to violate these constitutional rights. All of the attorneys who were present in the courtroom concurred, despite the seriousness of the gun violence in Albuquerque, that it is in the public's best interest to protect civil rights, including the right to carry a weapon. This was stated despite the fact that they were aware of the problem. The attorney for the governor stated that the public health order is only temporary and not a law, and that as a result, it does not have the same effect on the rights of New Mexicans. The judge, on the other hand, did not agree. Other elements of the public health order continue to be in place. These provisions include the governor's plans to increase the number of New Mexico state police officers stationed in Bernalillo County and to enhance health care services for those who are homeless and drug users. Senator Greg Baca, the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate, voiced his gratitude to the judge for deciding against an order issued by the governor that Baca believed to be unlawful. Baca emphasized the significance of preserving the Constitution in his remarks. In the wake of the decision, Governor Grisham emphasized her dedication to addressing issues of drug misuse and gun violence in the context of the state's public health system. She made an appeal to the leaders of the state, including the mayors, county commissioners, legislators, and law enforcement authorities, to join her in putting into action policies that would save lives and make the environment safer. Attorney General Raul Torres of New Mexico encouraged a more collaborative approach to complex issues, including improving law enforcement, enacting stricter gun laws, improving pretrial detention regulations, investing in mental health and drug treatment, reducing recidivism, collecting real-time data on gun crimes, and implementing protective service frameworks for young individuals in order to prevent future offenses.
That had you prove some type of special need in order to get a permit.
There's simply no rational basis for it in terms of thinking about self-protection.
Take all of the guns from all of the people. That's their goal.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
California knows how to do these things well, and they know how to work around things so that they can just draft this new law.
Torres underlined the necessity of having meaningful discourse, as well as making prudent use of the resources available in the budget in order to bring about permanent change. New Mexico governor issues emergency order. In response to a spate of gun-related slayings, the governor of New Mexico, Michelle Grisham, has signed an emergency order that will, for at least the next month, make it illegal for residents of Albuquerque and the counties around the city to carry firearms openly in public. Last week, an 11-year-old child was slain outside of a baseball stadium for a small league, and the Democratic governor stated that she is prepared for legal battles, but she felt compelled to take action in response to the tragedy. According to Grisham, the state police would be in charge of the enforcement of any civil offenses that might occur. Both the sheriff of Bernalillo County, John Allen, and the chief of police in Albuquerque, Harold Medina, have declared that they will not enforce it because it creates too many questions and issues with regard to constitutional rights. The ban on carrying weapons, which is referred to as an emergency public health order, applies to both open and concealed carry in the vast majority of public locations, including city sidewalks and urban leisure zones. This is because the ban is considered to be an emergency for public health. The restriction is predicated on a threshold for violent crime that is now only satisfied by the metropolitan region of Albuquerque. The temporary ban does not apply to authorized security personnel or law enforcement officers. A $5,000 fine and civil penalties might be imposed on violators, according to Caroline Sweeney, a spokesperson for the governor. As long as the handgun has a trigger lock or some other device that prevents it from discharging, people are nevertheless permitted to bring guns to select private facilities, such as gun range or a gun shop. Not all law enforcement officers agreed with Grisham's choice, she acknowledged. At a news conference, she added, "I welcome the debate and fight about how to make New Mexicans safer." She was joined by law enforcement representatives. John Allen expressed his concerns about the order in a statement, but he was willing to work with authorities to stop gun violence. While acknowledging the need, Allen stated that the temporary prohibition threatens the foundation of our Constitution, which I swore an oath to uphold. I am wary of putting my deputies in situations that could result in disputes over civil liability, as well as the potential risks posed by denying law-abiding citizens access to their constitutional right to self-defense, the sheriff said. According to police spokesperson Gilbert Gallegos, enforcing the governor's order might potentially put Albuquerque police in a precarious position with the U.S. Department of Justice about a police reform deal. He stated late on Friday that all of those are unanswered questions. In issuing the order, Grisham cited a number of recent slayings in Albuquerque. Froilan Villegas, 11, was slayed and a lady was badly injured in a suspected road rage slaying that occurred outside a minor league baseball stadium. The slaying occurred as spectators were leaving the game. Galilea Samaniego, 5, was shot and slayed last month while dozing off in a motorhome. Police claim that 4 teenagers drove into the mobile home park in 2 stolen cars early on August 13 and started slaying at the trailer. After being hit in the head, the girl passed away in the hospital. The 13-year-old Amber Archuleta was shot and slayed in Taos County in August, according to the governor. Authorities claim that the girl was shot and slayed by a 14-year-old boy using his father's rifle when they were at his house. "Something is very wrong," said Grisham in a statement, "when New Mexicans are afraid to be in crowds, to take their kids to school, to leave a baseball game, when their very right to exist is threatened by the prospect of violence at every turn," she added. The leading Republican in the state Senate promptly criticized the governor's Friday initiatives to impose gun restrictions as a means of reducing violent crime. What does the governor do when a child is slayed and the slayer is still at large? Senator Greg Baca of Beelan claimed that she targets law-abiding citizens with an unconstitutional gun order. Even if the measure's legal future is up in the air, Miranda Viscoli, co-president of New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, praised the governor's order as a brave and essential move toward reducing gun violence. Viscoli said, "If it saves one life, it's worth doing." Since 2019, Grisham has signed a slew of laws limiting access to firearms, including a 2020 red flag law allowing law enforcement to temporarily take guns away from people who might harm themselves or others, and expanding background checks to almost all private gun sales.
I have supported the minority leader, and I got a letter from...
If you did, you still couldn't use it because you couldn't go about your daily life without crossing through some type of sensitive location.
The co-chair of the Second Amendment Caucus, Mr. Massey.
It is reported from the Rules Committee. Against any resolution reported,
They don't care about that fundamental liberty law-abiding citizens in this country enjoy.
In front of the view of 90 school children, directly adjacent to a public middle school.
She also approved a law that prohibits those who are subject to long-term protective orders due to domestic abuse from possessing firearms. The directive issued on Friday instructs state authorities to check all gun dealers on a monthly basis to make sure they are abiding with the law. In addition to age, race, gender, and ethnicity, the State Department of Health will also prepare a report on gunshot victims in New Mexico hospitals that includes the brand and caliber of the associated firearms, as well as other general circumstances. Federal judge blocks New Mexico governor's gun rights suspension. A federal judge, U.S. District Judge David Urias, has blocked a portion of New Mexico Governor Michelle Grisham's public health order that suspended the right to carry guns in public areas across the state's largest metropolitan area. The decision comes amid mounting criticism and political divisions over the Democratic governor's action. Governor Grisham issued an emergency public health order suspending the right to openly carry or conceal guns in public places, based on a statistical threshold for violent crime that applied solely to Albuquerque and its surrounding area. She cited recent slayings in the state, particularly those involving children, as the rationale behind the order. Judge Urias sided with the plaintiffs who accused Grisham of infringing on constitutional rights. He granted a temporary restraining order blocking the governor's suspension of gun rights until another hearing is held in early October. In response, Governor Grisham stated that she would not accept the status quo. She pledged to increase state police presence in Bernalillo County and focus on apprehending individuals with outstanding warrants. Additionally, she plans to direct the healthcare system to expand its capacity to address drug addiction and homelessness. Plaintiffs' lawyers argued that the governor had alternative choices to solve the issue, and they portrayed her actions as a punitive move against law-abiding individuals. Their argument was based on the fact that the governor has access to alternative solutions. They highlighted that the Second Amendment does not have any exceptions, and that state governors are not permitted to confiscate citizens' firearms in an arbitrary manner. Cameron Atkinson, an attorney based in Connecticut who represents We the Patriots USA, and Dennis Smith, a native of Bernalillo County, described the conduct of the governor as an emotional response to horrible events. Judge Urias made it clear that despite the fact that he appreciated the governor's aim in addressing these unfortunate deaths, it was his responsibility to evaluate a more specific question about constitutional rights. Concerned about the possibility of public health orders being misused in order to effect policy changes, the Republican legislators, who hold the majority in the legislature, have demanded that impeachment proceedings be initiated against the governor. After the governor used public health orders to enforce tight lockdowns in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, several locals have accused her of pushing the limits of her executive authority. This accusation is particularly relevant in light of the fact that she used those orders.
Policymakers to really understand the situation that I think we are currently in.
Contrast that with what Republicans did to address gun violence and crime the last time they were in charge.
And there's been quite a few amendments. Well, the last thing to happen just happened yesterday.
There's a hearing that you can't be at, your counsel can't be present, you haven't been charged with the crime.
Now today, as you all know as well, we're also marking National Gun Violence Awareness Day.
So in California, it was extremely difficult. California had to get rid of that good cause or just cause requirement.
Even some of the most prominent Democrats in the state, such as New Mexico's Attorney General Raul Torres, have expressed the opinion that the governor could have made better use of her time by drafting comprehensive legislation to solve the issue. It is important to note that New Mexico is an open carry state. Hence, the order issued by the governor to halt open and hidden carry of weapons affected everybody in Bernalillo County who lawfully owned a pistol, with a few notable exceptions. New Mexico governor's attempt to suspend right to carry faces legal challenge. In a recent development, Michelle Grisham of New Mexico has issued a controversial public health executive order that seeks to suspend the right to carry firearms openly and concealed for a 30-day period within the city of Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. This move has sparked outrage, with critics accusing the governor of overreaching her authority and infringing on citizens' constitutional rights. Under the pretext of a statewide public health emergency related to drug abuse and gun violence in specific areas, the governor claims unilateral authority to suspend these constitutional rights. This has raised concerns about the potential imposition of what is akin to martial law, effectively denying citizens their fundamental right to carry firearms for self-defense. Remarkably, the governor's actions have not gone unchallenged within her own political party and administration. The New Mexico Attorney General has publicly stated that his office will not provide legal defense for the governor's order. In a strongly worded letter to the governor, the Attorney General emphasized his duty to uphold and defend the constitutional rights of all citizens. He expressed skepticism about the order's efficacy in improving public safety and questioned its constitutionality. The Attorney General's letter highlights a critical legal concern regarding the order: the attempt to rebrand gun violence as a public health emergency. This maneuver is seen as insufficient to meet the judicial standards required to justify the suspension of citizens' rights to carry firearms, regardless of their criminal conduct or intent. In a decisive conclusion, the Attorney General firmly stated that his office would not undertake the defense of the emergency order, while acknowledging his statutory obligation to defend state officials when sued in their fiscal capacity. He made it clear that the paramount duty was to protect and uphold the constitutional rights of every citizen. Therefore, he declined to provide legal defense for the governor's actions.
Is that despite billions of revenue, the state is not funded meaningful criminal justice reform.
We're California, we're just going to go ahead and ban it outright, just in a different way that's going to be harder to legislate. So
let's see what is the most compelling thing to learn from that case. How many times was this gentleman?
If we're referring to the ban on assault weapons, correct? Yes.
Myself and some of the other parents responded in a way to try and get the children to safety, and thank God.
This legal standoff highlights a significant challenge to the governor's attempt to restrict the right to carry firearms in New Mexico. The outcome of this lawsuit will undoubtedly have broader implications for the ongoing debate surrounding gun rights and public safety. A call to consider legislative responses over defense. We strongly urge you to think about whether the time and effort invested in defending it might be better used in the creation of thorough legislative responses. To be clear, the Attorney General in this state is not pro-gun and is actually very anti-gun, but even he recognizes how overbroad and unconstitutional this order is, so he won't risk his reputation to defend it. The fact that the governor is asking the state police to potentially enforce this order after the Bernalillo County Sheriff said he would not is also significant. All of this is coming to a head today, with a number of lawsuits that are being heard in TRL Rosa being heard in a New Mexico district court. Soon after the order was issued by the governor, you had organizations like NAGR, GOA, SAF, FBC, and others file lawsuits against the state of New Mexico.
Then the White House walked back that statement.
We filed formal petitions for rulemaking through the appropriate channels.
Of any semi-automatic assault weapon that was lawfully possessed before the bill became law.
We are taking action. We are getting things done, and we are trying to save lives.
Who was harmed was the 13-year-old who brought the gun to this park.
All of them are seeking some form of a TRO to immediately stop the governor from being able to enforce this order. Focus on the GOA lawsuit. Focusing on the GOA lawsuit, but again, look at all the organizations, look at all their lawsuits. There are a ton of organizations who are jumping into this fight and are fighting for our right to keep and bear arms. Now, in the recent motion by GOA, where they're requesting a TRO, they state that there is no defense to defendants' actions, legal, moral, or otherwise. Their actions clearly and unambiguously violate the Second Amendment's protection of the right to bear arms that shall not be infringed and deprive law-abiding gun owners of their only means of self-defense from criminal attack while in public.
And said he supports a ban on the sale of assault weapons, which there's no such thing.
And call on young people to continue leading efforts to end gun violence.
Tearing apart families and making our streets less safe.
But let's just say that you actually did get a permit under the original SB2.
And violent offender, that those folks should have no ability to be released.
For that reason, this court must end this unconstitutional charade before the train even leaves the station. To that end, because plaintiffs and thousands of others like them will suffer serious and irreparable harm not only to their constitutional rights but also potentially to their personal safety, plaintiffs request an immediate temporary restraining order be issued on an emergency basis, followed by a preliminary and then a permanent injunction. GOA secures temporary restraining order against New Mexico governor's order. GOA also claims that the state of New Mexico has no legal defense for what it is doing, so it is requesting an ex parte court hearing and an ex parte restraining order against it. As a result, GOA is requesting an immediate emergency TRO with other organizations in order to stop this public health order. They are also requesting a preliminary permanent injunction in the future to stop the governor. Going forward, they're also asking for the TRO to be issued on an ex parte basis, which essentially means that the government shouldn't even be able to present an argument and shouldn't really be required to do so because it's so unconstitutional. As mentioned earlier, this all came to a head with a recent hearing that took place and was a hearing on a number of TROs in total. The GOA case, all these cases which were challenging the New Mexico governor's order which prohibited carry, both open and concealed within the state. Now, we're not going to rehash all the things that happened at this hearing, Again, it was a consolidated hearing, but the punchline of all this is that the judge here did in fact grant a temporary restraining order against this order that was issued by the New Mexico governor. So, we did win this case right here and now, at least for this time period, because the judge here, who was, left-leaning potentially, was a Biden appointee. This judge still did grant a TRO, and during the discussion, the judge stated very clearly that the state's attorney had an uphill battle, especially in light of Bruen. Some of the things that came out of this were they talked about how Bruen pretty much addressed specifically what the governor is trying to do in this case. In Bruen, one of the things that Thomas said was that the state of New York could not simply make the entire island of Manhattan a prohibited place, and he said that type of restriction would clearly be unconstitutional. Well, that's exactly what the New Mexico governor did here with the city of Albuquerque, and also this one specific county and potentially others. So, under Bruen, the judge said that there was a likelihood of success on the merits, that the plaintiffs have met their standards for a TRO, a likelihood of success on the merits, irreparable harm, and then a balancing of the public's interest. The judge here said that at least for this TRO, the plaintiffs have met those burdens. Therefore, he granted a restraining order which prohibits various aspects of this order from being enforced, specifically sections 1 and 4, and the judge is putting this restraining order in place for a period of time which is going to be longer than 14 days because of some scheduling conflicts that the attorneys had. So, it's going to be a restraining order in place at least for now, and then there's going to be a preliminary injunction hearing, which is going to take place really soon, which is going to be on October 3rd, and then there will be a decision on whether or not there will be some sort of injunction that will extend beyond the TRO.
The House and the Senate about pretrial detention. Well,
yesterday, Speaker Pelosi, speaking at an anti-gun rally in San Francisco, stated,
I think worse than that, sir. You will see millions of otherwise law-abiding citizens
shall not be infringed.
And his teammates. All of the ancillary personnel, the moms.
But as of right now, we got a significant win. This was a fast one because of clearly how big of an emergency this was, how significant of a constitutional burden this would be. And so, the judge here did grant a TRO, and this order in the state of New Mexico has been suspended, at least temporarily. Lawsuit against California's new concealed carry ban. The CRPA, GOA, SAF, and other parties filed a lawsuit against the state of California, and their new concealed carry ban passed through SB 2. Now, the basics surrounding this is that California, through this new law, will make it next to impossible for you to carry concealed within the entire state because they have put in place so many sensitive locations. The sensitive location restrictions in SB 2 are so comprehensive that most streets, sidewalks, and businesses will be completely off limits. This was all done in direct response to the Supreme Court's Bruen decision. Prior to Bruen, California had a May issue good cause standard. And what they ended up doing after Bruen is they saw that New York put in place the CCIA law and that New Jersey put in place the restrictive law. So, California is following suit. They want to put in place a hyper-restrictive concealed carry scheme, make permitting and the whole process even harder, and essentially make it so that even if you get a permit, it's almost useless. One of the positive things with all this is that we've seen in cases like the Antoniuk case, which is the GOA lawsuit against the state of New York in the CCIA, there were positive outcomes at the district court level. And then you also have the New Jersey Coons case, which also was positive out of the district court in New Jersey. So we've received positive decisions out of district courts, even in areas that tend to be anti-gun. Hopefully this will be a similar situation with this lawsuit filed by CRPA and the other organizations, myself, and Reno as plaintiffs. Hopefully we can get this stopped against the state of California.
For any number of criminal penalty enhancements.
Retired law enforcement, judges, and people of that nature.
Today, Vice President Harris will also deliver remarks at John Lewis High School, where she will talk about
for the Biden administration about these issues we are discussing today prior.
The rule also allows certain legislation to qualify for the consensus calendar before the end of Congress.
I treated those gunshot and stab wounds at the scene while we waited for first responders.
But as you can see, one of the major battles going on right now is in relation to your right to carry. Some states continue to defy what the Supreme Court said in Bruen, what the Second Amendment says about your right to keep and bear arms. But in response, you are having amazing two-way organizations like CRPA, GOA, FBC, and others standing up and fighting for the people. Again, hopefully, we can get a lot of these things struck down. However, as usual, donating and supporting these groups' legal efforts are important ways you may help. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.